Hi, welcome back. So this is the start of a new section, and now that we've learned all we need to know about selectors, we're going to actually start styling up our website and making it look good. So first of all, let's just talk about coloring in general. I mean, what is coloring and what are we supposed to do with it? So as we know, we already have a bunch of colors here and they all look fine, but what we're actually trying to do here is color our website in a way that makes it look modern and appealing to users. So we're going to be learning a bunch of different techniques that you can use to color your website. Now we've already used one in the past and it's the very common one, and that is of course the color property. Now we're going to be talking more about this in the next video and using it in depth. But first thing I want to talk about is the different types of colors, because there's actually more than one. So first of all, we've all used, and well, you've at least seen me use, the colors given by name. So for example, red, green, blue, and purple. But there's actually more than that. There's so much more to colors than just those names, because as you know, they're actually quite limiting. You can't really change the color and choose it as you want. So what I'm here to teach you about is the 3 different types of colors and how they work. So the first one is obviously the CSS color codes or names. And what they do is pretty much given a name and they each have a designated color. So this is a really easy way for testing colors, for example, if you want to test if a property works, as we saw at the beginning of this course. And you can also use them for, maybe quick fixes or trying to just try out different colors. But once you get into the really specific, detailed web design, and once you start producing your website properly, you're going to want more than just the color CSS gives you. So I've actually attached to the lecture resources this website here. You have a bunch of different CSS color codes, and you can see that there's actually a huge range of them. We only use the basic ones that are quite vibrant and they really hit the eyes very hard, but you can see there's actually a lot more than what we just used. The only problem is nobody wants to memorize all of these different names. So what we're actually going to be doing is learning how to use these 2, which are the ones I'm going to be talking about in this video. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about Hex Code. Okay, so first of all, I have a color picker over here just to demonstrate how this whole thing works. We actually don't need this for now, so I'm going to put this up on full screen. So this is a color picker that I found on Google. You can go ahead and search it anywhere, but I like using Google's provided one because it provides you with both the hex code and the RGB code. Don't worry, we'll talk about those in just a second. So first of all, you can slide up and down this thing and choose whichever color you want, and you can see that these 2 codes change. So what do they actually mean? Well, first, let's talk about the hex code. So we all know that when you're normally using numbers, you range from 0 to 9. So any given number in that numeral system can be made up of 0, 1, 2, and all the way up to 9. So in that case, there's 10 possible combinations. But in hex code, there's actually 16 different possible combinations. You can go from 0 to 9 and then A to F. So for example, let's just take this right here. This can actually be converted into a number if we wanted to. Suppose B actually stands for 12 because it goes 0 to 9 and then A, B, so 12. And you can actually convert this into a number, which is very interesting. So I'm not really going to be talking about the applications of hex code in this video, because that goes all the way down into computer science and we're not really looking at that now. But one thing we can do is actually create colors based on this. So first of all, you'll notice that our code here starts off with a hashtag, and then you have 6 digits. So each one can have 16 possible combinations. But as we know, any color is made up of either red, green, or blue, at least on the computer for the standard color palette. So it's made up of red, green, and blue. Now basically, this hex code is split up into 3 2-digit pairs. So the first pair of numbers is meant to represent the amount of red in the color, the second the amount of green, and the third the amount of blue, RGB. And these pairs can range from 0, 0, which means none of that color, to FF, which is the highest value. Remember, hexadecimal goes from 0 to F. So I'm just going to choose something very basic here, like a standard blue. You can see here that this is the purest blue that you can get. Pretty much what this is saying is the first 2 is 0, 0, which means there's no red. The second pair is also 0, 0, which means no green, but then the third is FF, which means all blue. So this is pretty easy. So if we go to something like white, for example, this would have FF, 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 which is all red, all green, all blue, which actually creates white. And if we chose black, you can see that that's 0. So this is a pretty hard thing to understand once you get into some of these more complicated colors. Again, we don't really use hexadecimal in normal use. When we're creating colors or writing code, we don't really use these numbers. So it's actually much easier to work with RGB codes. So RGB is a little bit different in the style that it's written, but it all represents the same concept. Pretty much, there are 3 numbers here, and these aren't hexadecimal numbers. These are just normal numbers. You have 3 numbers, the first for red, the second for green, and the third for blue. Just like this one, except in this case, the numbers can go from 0 to 255, 0 being the minimum and 255 being the maximum. So this is actually much easier to read. Let's go back to our blue here, and I'm actually just going to write the code here. So you can see that there's 0 red, 0 blue, and 0 red, 0 green, and 255 blue, which is the maximum. And obviously, you can see that once we go back to those complicated colors, when you look here, it's quite complicated to understand. But when we look at the RGB code, we can see that there's a moderate amount of red, a large amount of green, and a large amount of blue. And therefore, it should theoretically be a cold color. Now, again, you don't really need to know how to construct these codes from your head. They're quite hard to understand. So what I would recommend is when you're designing these colors or designing these websites, I would recommend you just go and use a color picker. It's much easier to decide, and you can also get a lot more experience, hands-on experience with these colors rather than memorizing all the theory behind them. So both of these will work fine, and in the next video, I'm going to show you how to actually use these codes in our website and actually use them to style and color text. All right, let's move on.